Requesting connection. Established. Encrypted. We're live. The show you've been asking for. Advice, technology, and community. Linux first, all others second. This is Ask Noah.
Live from Southeast Linuxfest, the Ask Noah show starts right now. This is the show where we came to do all the things on Linux they said couldn't be done and take your questions on how to do the same. The phone lines are open this hour. To be a part of the program, it is a free call, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624, or send an email to live@asknoahshow.com. My name is Noah Chalaya. I am your host. Delighted to be here with you as another episode of the Ask Noah show kicks off this hour. Joining me, my co-host, Mr. Steve Ovens. Welcome in, sir.
So this is the week a year that I lose all of my sleep. Like a lot of people struggle with the daylight savings time change. Mm-hmm. This is the week where I have a ton of sleep to end up catching up on.
You know, my dad tells me consistently that that's not really a thing. You can't really catch up on sleep. There's a limit to how much in the sleep deficit you can go, and then your risk of diabetes triples.
You know, I'd heard the same thing, but I don't think 3 or 4 days is like a huge deficit I won't recover from.
Right. No, I think you can make it. Plus, you get plenty of time to catch up on sleep when you're dead.
Well, isn't that positive?
So, Steve, we talked earlier this week, I guess it would be, on the value of conferences and the value of being in person and doing those things. Having been here for a couple of days and seeing everything from getting set up to spending some time with people behind the scenes to actually doing the conference. What have you thought?
I really enjoy being able to mix with specific people that I don't get to see. So we have friends. So Noah and I are from the Dakotas, obviously, and
North Dakota, South Dakota, don't you know there?
I get to see people from West Virginia, from Ohio, obviously from North Carolina. I ended up running into 5 or 6 people from my company here, which was a surprise, and we had a little huddle. And all of that is just FaceTime that I wouldn't have otherwise got.
To the extent that you're able to share with me, can you tell me a little bit about the gal who came over and was sharing? She got hired with a very well-known home improvement store. And she made a lot of those connections here to include you, who gave a little bit of insight by way of how to structure resumes and stuff.
Yeah, so it happened that she came to a couple of my talks. I take zero credit for this, right? Just the backstory is she came to a couple of my talks, and one of the things I like to focus on is trying to help people frame things better, because one of the core skill sets that I do have is the ability to frame information in a way that it is relatable to the person that you are talking to.
Yes.
And so she flagged me down. And actually, I spent quite a bit of time with her and her friend as we just chatted throughout the night. I think it was Friday night. Was it the Friday night that you had your friend?
Yep.
And so we had a good long chat, and then we connected on Twitter, X, whatever. And so we've just kind of kept in touch every couple of months as she's progressed through that journey.
So she came and sought us out, and she was like, "Hey guys, I landed the job. It's been great." And then she got to tell us a little bit about how it was really cool hearing about her dad was a small electronics guy, and so had always kind of pushed her into doing more with technology. And I think she told me she was a ham radio operator at 11 years old. And so, just kind of blows that myth of women can't do tech. No, she blew it right out of the water, right? But did it on merit. And went to college, studied computer science, became a software developer, now works for infrastructure, and is working for a very recognizable home improvement store, and is excited and passionate about what she's doing, and is excited to work her way up. And it was interesting talking to her, because she said, last year, 1 year ago, I came to these talks and I didn't necessarily understand all the things that people were talking about. Now I'm working with those things. And the vernacular means something to me, and so I'm picking up so much more this year. And my response to her was, everybody who works in tech remembers the time where we were like, this seems like a different language. What are these people even talking about? And then, frantically taking notes and going back, and because you're too embarrassed to ask, and then looking up all the vernacular so you can see what it means. So, my encouragement to her was just be looking for the next you that's walking around here. To meet somebody, because that's what gets you hired. That's the networking that gets you in those circles.
she did all of it on her own. She one of the things that struck me about this woman was she asked very insightful questions for a person that was just starting out, and that's what really struck me, like the underlying intelligence. I actually offered to put her resume forward at the place that I work, but she'd already landed the job by the time that we had worked through that, so that was not really needed. So I was really impressed with the thought process that she displayed.
That's cool. So Steve, even on a self weekend, we got some feedback. You want to do the feedback?
Let's do it.
Our first email comes in from Scott. Scott writes in and says, Noah and Steve. Some time ago, Noah interviewed a man who wrote a NixOS install script. The purpose was installing NixOS on an older laptop for the purpose of donating laptops to students. Do you happen to have a link to the install script, and could you help me find the Ask Noah episode? Are you aware of any technology nonprofits in the Boston, Massachusetts area? I'd love to volunteer with an agency. Thanks, Scott. So I know exactly what he's talking about. He is talking about a gentleman from Olympia, Washington, named Mike. And Mike put together a really fantastic system. Mike was frustrated because he gave a computer to a person who was in need, and he wanted them to be able to use Linux. So he put Linux on it and he handed the computer back. And a few years later, he got the computer back from that person. They said, hey, I'm in a different place. I was able to buy my own computer. Thank you for doing this to me. I wanted to make sure that this gets upcycled, so to speak. So they gave the computer back. And what was frustrating to Mike was he found that the computer hadn't been updated in 4 years because they just didn't know what they were doing. So Mike set out upon the endeavor of making it so that the computer updates itself. And so he customized an install of NixOS that did exactly that. He's basically trying to mimic a Chromebook. And so the operating system is Nix. On top of that are Flatpaks, and they install it and do the thing. He has since open sourced, well, I think it was always open source, but he has open sourced all of that. We'll have a link for you in the show notes, podcast.asknoahshow.com, and I will try and go dig up what episode that was on, and we'll include that for you. Steve, I'm going to guess that your opinion hasn't changed much. You would still say NixOS is the domain knowledge is not widely applicable enough to make the juice worth the squeeze.
Generally speaking, I'd say yes. Now, there's an evolving thought here depending on what your target is. If your target is to manage your infrastructure via LLM agents, there might be something to be said, because it is one of the few, there are a few others, but one of the few that you can declaratively install and manage and handle. So some of that domain knowledge that you need to have in order to run NixOS kind of fades into the background if you're not the one having to figure out, where do I put this thing, where does that binary go. If you can ask your agent, make sure this gets installed, and it knows how to do it, then it sort of becomes a little bit less relevant.
So our awesome team put this together for us. Ask Noah Show /439 is where we talked for Mike Kelly, and the project is called Nixbook. So you can look it up, but of course I'll include links to both episode 439 and the Nixbook project at podcast.asknoahshow.com. Our second email comes in from Charlie. Charlie writes in and says, "Good day, everyone. Did you happen to see the news? Motorola effectively bricked its entire line of Wi-Fi routers without an explanation." He gives a link. So it's called MotoSync, and it's a mobile app that's now required to set up and troubleshoot your Motorola Wi-Fi router. It suddenly stopped working, and nobody knows why. So this is back to what we talk about frequently. Like, if you can't log into the thing, if you don't have administrative access, you don't really own it.
Yeah, I went digging to see. So the article was from the middle of May, and so I went to see if this is still the case, as much as you can tell. So there are up-to-date reviews on Google Play, and there are Reddit posts from the end of May indicating that this is likely not a short-term outage. Like, sometimes what we find out is, or at least what the story is that we had an infrastructure outage and we're now back online, right? Because in this particular case, the app was erroring with server license expired, which could have been an oopsie on the infrastructure side. But as we're almost a month past the time when the article was published, and I'm still seeing people, we'll say, review bombing, it seems like this is still actually a persistent issue, as opposed to a transient one that it took them, a day or a week to figure out.
Our third email comes from Araya. Araya writes in and says, "Hi, Noah and Steve. I use Gmail, and I like to back up my older emails, then delete it from Gmail to free up some space, and to give Google a little less info about me. Ideally, I'd like to be able to search from one app that has access to my current emails in Gmail, my backed up emails, the ability to send new emails. I'm considering using Thunderbird to back up my emails yearly in a mail directory format and storing the emails in a folder in Nextcloud. The mail directory format would ensure that any changes would be backed up incrementally as opposed to the Mbox format, in which any change would require rebacking up all the emails. There are some downsides. Number one, I don't think I'd be able to search all my old emails from my phone unless I downloaded them all to my phone, which would be a bit tight for my room. Number two, I'd be nervous about opening Thunderbird on two computers and creating a sync conflict. I'm wondering if there's any self-hosted app that would hold backed up emails, have access to current emails, and be able to send emails, all from one place. I don't want to run my own mail server. It sounds too complicated. Also, this would be ideal if it was multi-user so my family could use it. Thanks for the show, Araya." So, Steve, you have some thoughts.
I do have some thoughts, although I can't meet all of the checkboxes. The send from the same place, that's somewhat of a struggle.
Tell me you want a mail server without telling me you want a mail server.
Right. That's somewhat problematic. What I did for my dad was I put him on paperless NG because it can suck in your emails. It indexes them. You can tag them. In fact, if it is your thing, you can actually, it has a plugin for a very small language model that will auto tag things for you and do the sorting and all of that sort of stuff. To include being able, what my dad uses it for is he needs to be able to have a searchable ability to find the attachments in the email. And that makes it...
right during the show, that makes sense.
That makes it very invaluable for him. And so it can suck down old emails. Essentially, his is plugged in and it pulls his email provider 3 times a day and just pulls in the constant email stream for him.
So joining us from the audience, it is Sleuth. Sleuth, welcome into the program.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. What's on your mind?
So I had a couple of things to add here. Thunderbird, when attached to a mail server, will not have syncing issues. I don't know about the backups specifically. You may also take a look at Proton Mail. Proton Mail has their... so they've had a feature for a while where you can take your Gmail exports and it will import them directly in, and all you have to do is sign in and it'll sync it, and that's all great. They recently added a feature where Proton Mail can actually send through Google as well now, and so it kind of acts as like a meta app on top of, so you can send and receive mail from both your Proton Mail accounts and from your Gmail account. In addition to that, I actually have switched over to a different provider called Migadoo, which for $20 a year you can send 200 a day, and you can receive 200 a day, and you can send 20 emails, and you get some storage for that. And I've had a lot of good luck with it, and that actually came from a recommendation from somebody else in the Geek Labs. There's a couple of us out there using it. So it's like bring your own domain and do whatever you want, but you don't have to worry about hosting your own email server.
So Proton Mail is where, well, my mind first went to Mail in the Box. Then he said he didn't want to host email, so my mind went to Proton Mail, in part because of the feature that you're talking about, in which you can use Proton Mail to access Gmail, which still having a hard time getting my brain wrapped around that. I'm conflicted in this way. Part of me says, well, you can't do that because you're eventually going to run out of space. Then the other part of me says, yeah, but every Christmas I get an email from Proton Mail going, thanks for being a customer for another year. Here's more space to store more emails. So I feel like if you hold on to them long enough, maybe the problem just kind of solves itself.
I currently have 18 gigs free in my Proton Mail. I am a long way from burning that. Can confirm the Proton Mail migration works, and I did it years ago at this point when I migrated off of Gmail. Sleuth, that is a great suggestion. I hadn't considered that. I still like the idea, if I'm archiving them specifically, I like the idea of paperless, but to each their own, right? I like the ability. I suppose you could try and sort your mail inside of Proton Mail after you've sucked it all down and done that, but the ability to both search for things by tags and all the kind of stuff that paperless does for an email archiving purpose, I think it's great.
So at WWDC 2026, Apple announced that Apple Intelligence-powered features is now going to automatically fix weak and compromised passwords. So you heard that right. Safari and the built-in Apple Password Manager is going to automatically flag duplicate or compromised passwords. So for example, if you enter a password when creating an account, Apple is going to warn you that it detects the password as weak. And Safari is going to help you create a secured password. However, Apple's built-in password manager doesn't try to automatically fix your compromised passwords. That changes with the new AI-powered security feature. If you can't see me, I'm using my air finger quotes here. Security feature. Steve, help me with this. We are taking a thing that is really good at mathematically predicting the next thing. In other words, it's very predictable, which is good, kind of. And we're going to take that thing and we're going to use it to create something new and novel and that can never be guessed. How's that going to work out?
Yeah, it turns out that there's already been some research in this area, and not good, Noah, not good.
So it turns out, like, what did we, when we were looking it up, what was it, 6 out of 20 passwords or 6 out of 30 passwords?
No, we're out of 50 passwords, depending on the model, somewhere between 18 and 23 of them were the same.
Regenerate the same thing.
Yes.
This is, there are multiple things that give me a compulsive eye twitch. So number one, the idea that Apple is going to log into my accounts and change my passwords, that already makes me uncomfortable and gives me all sorts of icky feelings inside. Number two, the fact that we are going to use, this is the thing we're going to hand off to AI, seems a bit short-sighted to me. And the third thing, and I'm giving you credit for this is Apple calling all their users dumb.
Yeah, I just couldn't. So as we were talking about this, one of your friends, Peter, was the one that brought this up to us. So we were all sitting around a table. I guess that's another plug for being in person, right? Where I probably wouldn't have caught this story without Peter kind of announcing it to the group. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that jumped out at me is, hey, you're so dumb that you can't actually figure out to change your own passwords, so we'll do it for you mandatorily.
with or without your consent.
Yeah, exactly.
Unreal. So Apple is doing this. You can learn more at bleepingcomputer.com. I'll have a link for you in the show notes at podcast.asknoahshow.com. The foundation models are custom built in collaboration with Google, Apple, and Gemini models. Likely its output to fine-tune its own model and deeply integrated them into Apple Intelligent Experience. The latest models run on device and servers using private cloud compute, Apple wrote in their blog post. Every facet of Apple Intelligent Architecture is built privacy first, from the latest Apple Foundation models to the core operating system that integrate with these models deep into Apple's platform. So don't worry, Steve. They built it on Apple's foundation models, so it's safe and secure and very, very private. Apple told me so right there in that article.
Did you just say that it runs on device? Is that what it just said there?
Well, it's a mix, right? It runs on private cloud compute with some models, sharing some of your personal data. And while private cloud compute is handling user requests, their personal data is not stored or made accessible to Apple or anybody else.
So I'm not exactly sure how it works. So even if you have, let's say you have that local model and it technically never leaves your device from the actual data itself.
Uh-huh.
The local model tries to turn through it. Now this is my understanding, because I had read a little bit about this. My understanding is the local model tries to do what it can, and when it can't do it, it hands it off. So even if you're handing off the context, you may not be literally handing that VCF card, the contact card file out to the internet. But if it can't handle whatever you've asked it to do, it still has to pass that in the context so the big boy can actually do something what you've asked it to do. Mm-hmm. So it's technically not leaving the device, but it's leaving the device.
The biggest problem is it's leaving your control, right? You don't have a say, and we're left to guess what leaves the device, what is staying on the device, what's happening here.
Yeah.
Right? So to me, that's the biggest is we don't really know what's happening. But here's the thing. Really, this is the same pattern that has been true from the 80s or 90s. It has just been repeating over and over and over again. What'd that say? Is that more important for me? You're calling you away. Okay. 1-855-450-NOAH, 855-450-6624. The email, live@asknoahshow.com. Joining the program, it is the one and only Mr. Alan Hicks.
The original, often imitated, never duplicated Alan Hicks. I was just going to jump in on that last bit and I had a few things to think about. I mean, everyone's seen the XKCD cartoon about correct horse battery staple, right? Where essentially what you do is you generate a truly random password using dice and correlate the rolls of these dice to real words that you then use to you stick together to formulate essentially a unique passphrase. Stupendously secure, very difficult for any computer to crack, and basically everything like Safari and such is going to choke on that and say it's an incorrect password because it doesn't have a capital letter and it doesn't have numbers and it doesn't have punctuation and all this sort of stuff. Secondly, here's another thing. I used to work for Rackspace, right? Yeah. And we had this thing called private cloud compute. The exact words that, Mac is using or Apple is using in that. Private cloud compute is a phrase that has no real meaning. At Rackspace, it meant you had a physical dedicated server sitting in a data center somewhere, not like cloudy in the form of, you have, what's the word for how they bill cloud by the hour and such. I can't come up with a phrase off the top of my head, but a phrase like private cloud compute can mean whatever the company decides it means. It's not like an industry-defined term. It's a term defined by every manufacturer, so it's effectively meaningless. They can say private cloud compute, and it makes people think, ooh, it's private. It could be anything.
And it can change.
At the manufacturer's will.
What do we do about that? Do you stay away from it? Do you say that's terrifying? Or do you say, this is the reality that, guys like you and me want to manage our own stuff? The average person is like, I don't understand it. I just don't want to get popped.
That's a doggone tough question. Like me, I manage my passwords. I have a text file that I put my passwords in, and I encrypt with a very secure password with, AES 256 encryption or something, and then delete the plain text. But, your typical average user isn't going to do that, so they have things like Bitwarden. I think they're actually a vendor here this year. Mm-hmm. There's programs out there that help you as the hoi polloi to manage this sort of problem. And I wonder how those are going to interact with Safari, especially if Safari changes your password out from underneath you. And now, is Safari going to integrate with Bitwarden or whatever, password management software you use elsewhere on your desktop?
And you have no idea.
Precisely. And here's the next thing. Why do you need an AI for this? What is wrong with a plain old pseudo-random number generator on your PC?
So I have a question for you. How about this? This is conspiracy theory time. Are you ready for some conspiracy theory?
I am ready for conspiracy theory. Bring on the aliens.
So Apple has gotten a lot of good press because they have refused to break into people's iPhones and give them the encrypted backups of the iPhone and stuff like that. Turns out, if your AI can just log in and change the password, you can still say, I don't give and break that encryption. And here, Mr. Man who's asking, look at that. You just happen to have access to the AI that can go in and change the password. And, oh, I'm sorry. It just echoed the password out to the terminal.
You made that man face, Paul. Tinfoil hat on the side.
Ooh, this is really nice because here's one of the problems with AI. You can't hold AI accountable for anything. When an AI does something, it isn't like Noah did this. I can take Noah to court and make Noah pay for what he did. I can't hold Gemini or ChatGPT accountable in the same sort of way. So if an AI does something like that, what's the mechanism for holding it accountable? I mean, you can, I suppose, sue Apple or something like that, but the way these AI systems work, it's almost like they're completely non-deterministic. Mm-hmm. So, Apple could kind of maybe make a case that, we didn't know it was doing this. It's just an AI. It does stuff, that we don't tell it to, that the user tells it to do. And there's so many layers of potential misdirection or unaccountability in that.
And there's so much precedent laid from the fact that they can point at all of the stories of the people like the AI deleted my email because it like misinterpreted me, or it was trying to be super helpful and it popped root on that box. I didn't tell it to do that. It just interpreted it that way.
Oh yeah, and this is only going to get worse as we get things like when AI first started up with the LLMs. I'm not going to go back to like the very limited AIs of let me select pass for this character in a video game. You know, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the more advanced large language models and stuff we have today. When those first came up, it's basically like ChatGPT. You go to a website, you give it a question, you get an answer. You give it a prompt, it generates an image or whatever. But now they're wanting to integrate everything straight into your desktop. They're wanting, the AI tool on your desktop, connecting with Outlook, with Microsoft Teams, with Zoom, with your wiki software, with your Jira tracking, with all these different things. Now, there's when it's on a web page, there's I don't want to say like an air gap, but there's there's more of a layer between I need to do this, it can tell me how to do this, and then I go do it, versus opposed to it's actually running on my desktop, and I say I need to do this, and it can do it. And we're getting more and more into that scary territory of I need to do this, and it just does it without my direct intervention.
What do you call that? Human in the loop?
Human in the loop, yeah. Except that
I
we're
like
not
that
actually
term.
we're not actually in the loop though, right? Because
Yeah.
when you just say go do the thing, you're no longer in the loop.
Right. When you use like the LLMs the way they should be used, like a glorified Google search, they're fantastic. I mean, they're really good. You can say, I need to do something in Ansible, and yes, I can go Google and find the documentation and look it up and copy that and make a little small change. But if I just need to say, hey, I need to install this package with DNF, it'll just spit it out, and you can very quickly verify that it's correct and use it. They're great at that. They're fantastic at that. If you want to say, I need a Python script that will do this little thing here, take this JSON data and find these fields or whatever, it's great at that, especially because, things like that are probably a read-only task anyway. You can quickly verify if it's operating correctly. When you start going beyond that, though, that's when you start to get into some scary places.
And then the humans start to lose the understanding of what the robots are doing for the humans.
And well, here's the thing. I mean, we as human beings are lazy. Yeah. Even if we understand
I've never heard that before.
Even if we understand it, if we do it 9 times and it's flawless 9 times, we'll stop checking it. On the 10th time, we'll stop checking it. And then by the 15th time, there's going to be some small problem that we're not going to catch. And the 16th through the 25th times, maybe it's flawless. And then the 26th time, there's a major problem that doesn't manifest itself immediately. And, it might be 6 months or a year down the road before anyone catches it.
Even when you know better. Like,
yes.
I'm pointing at me for the people that are on the stream. Like, I know better. I'm the one out there saying, like, people are lazy. Don't give this to people. Like, it's actually going to ruin your ability. And I use it. And like you said, it's that 10th through 20th time. It's like it did it so well. And then, so I was chatting with the bot about some code base that I wrote and then had it augment. And so it asked me, where do I find this function in your code? And I was like, maybe you should go find that for me.
Yeah. I know what you mean. And up until about a year ago, I didn't really use AI at all. I was very much opposed to. I'm like, I mean, it's a glorified Google search. I can just Google search. But then when you step into something wholly new, like I hadn't really worked with Ansible, and I say, well, hey, here's an Ansible playbook that I got out of our GitHub. what's all this do? And, well, where can I find this variable and blah, blah, blah. And it can really help explain that in plain text language that, it might take you an hour or two to find through the documentation. Mm-hmm. It's really good at that stuff. But again, that's essentially a glorified Google search.
Kind of. I would say the difference is in that realm, it's acting as a custom teacher, right? So you can ask it, I don't understand this part, explain this part to me, show me how to do this. And there's a discovery mechanism in there by which it might show you something that you didn't even know was possible, right? So you wouldn't have known to Google it, or you wouldn't have known to...
Precisely.
So
Precisely.
It becomes an unlock in that way.
I think if you use the AI as in that teacher role, if you were asking it questions like, how can I accomplish this task? What does this mean? Are there ways that I could have improved this function check or something? And read through its ideas and then try and learn from those ideas rather than take it for granted that it's correct. Mm-hmm. It's a fantastic tool. But when people say, I need to do this thing for me, and copy, paste, bam, that's when you really get into trouble.
See your previous comment about being lazy.
Yes. but here's the thing. Everyone's going to wind up doing it. Yeah. Over time, yes. Everyone's going to wind up doing it. And that's what terrifies me.
Does it, or does it give you some hope that people like you who understand things down to the basic level are always going to be employable, Alan?
No.
Really?
And here's the reason. I'm going to have to be very careful about this. Because over time, as pointy-haired bosses see AI as being so good that, that they try that, and 9 times out of 10 it works great. They think, well, we can do with less people in these positions because, now your programming language is English. I've heard that phrase bandied about quite a lot. And as they reduce the number of people in those positions, the people who are in those positions are going to be forced to lean more and more on those tools to make up the difference. And, as the tools get better, the pointy-haired bosses are going to be, under the pressure of, well, it might be cheaper to do away with some more people and lean more heavily on these tools. So, I'm not sanguine about that.
Okay.
Now, there exists another very big possibility. That being that this turns out to be a lot more expensive than people think.
Yes.
I know of a company that committed to spending $1 million with Anthropic Claude this year, and they spent $1.25 million in 3 weeks. It can be extremely expensive. So, and right now, so many of these AI companies are basically living off of investments. Mm-hmm. That once that investment money dries up, and the cost of these tools is no longer subsidized by people who are willing to take the risk that maybe one day this will be the next $10 trillion industry. Mm-hmm. Then maybe we might see an AI bubble, and I suspect over the next 5 years we probably will.
So I think I'd like to piggyback on top of that. I think you're right about that. And my evidence for that is you're seeing a walk back of per seat pricing to like pay per use or some hybrid of that. And the challenge, as Noah can tell you, being a small business owner, is that you can't work with some pricing model that you have no predictability over.
And can't control.
Right. So what would that do to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think to some degree you wind up just saying, this is not a viable path, I can't move forward with it, right? And so then you end up bailing. The problem there is you never go back because you got burned, right? I'm wondering if either of you think there's any validity to this idea that AI is not really a bubble because we've not been able to sufficiently saturate the hardware yet. Does that resonate with either of you?
I don't know that I know enough to answer that question, to be honest with you.
Well, so the idea would be if you had hardware that was sitting empty, you could see how it's going to eventually get to the point where it's not sustainable. But if every time we fire some hardware up, people are willing to throw money at it, and these companies can raise their prices, and people continue to throw money at it, does the bubble burst?
Yes, the bubble bursts. So I look at the dot-com boom. The internet didn't go away. The fundamental demand didn't go away. What happened was it turned out that the people that were doing the investment got overexcited. So even if we get better at the hardware density or the requirements to run these things, I don't think so. The technology I don't think is going to go away, even if we have a pop. But what we do have right now, I think, just some guy on the internet, but I think we have an overvaluation of these products, and they know that they're subsidizing it. One of the things that is often happening in the last 15 years is they heavily subsidize the thing to get users and then flip the business model. And that will work until it doesn't, because the people just can't afford to run that way, right? Even if it is an essential thing, what's going to happen is the Anthropics and the OpenAIs and the people who are really, really expensive, they're going to try and do it, and most people are going to be like, that is too expensive, and then they're going to go to a lesser model. And those people, there's so much riding on that valuation that everything is going to come down.
Yeah, I don't know how far it can realistically come down and remain profitable, though. I mean, this stuff's expensive. It's computationally extremely expensive, and that computational expense equates to enormous cost in data centers for electricity, for cooling. I mean, if you look at how much water one of these AI data centers needs, it's astounding.
Millions of gallons a day.
Yes. I mean, you're talking it has to be hooked up to a major river system, or some ridiculous amount of pumps in a city.
As a person who derived their living from a data center for many, many years, what do you think about the huge expansion of data centers all over the place? And I mean, is it a good thing? Is it the terrible 5-alarm fire that we're told it is, or is it somewhere in between?
I don't know that it's a 5-alarm fire necessarily. I mean, nobody wants a data center in their backyard. I mean, there's millions and millions of dollars tied up in these things, but they actually make very few jobs for any local area. So the amount of tax revenue and the amount of economic growth that, say, a small county might get out of putting in a data center, they don't get a ton out of it. And you certainly wouldn't want to put one of these in a pristine natural environment. Again, because of the water demands, you're going to have to either have a enormous city water system in order to fund or cool these things, which places an extreme demand on a city water system that was built to serve the residents and existing businesses, not all that plus these millions and millions and millions of more gallons each day for cooling one of these data centers. Or you're putting them in rural places that don't have that infrastructure and are going to be pulling, millions and millions of gallons of water a day out of a river or a lake somewhere, and that's not something that the locals are going to be happy about either. So,
not to mention the power demands of those.
Yes.
Right?
Then, it's really quite funny. Everyone jumped off of the renewable energy bandwagon as soon as AI came along because they realized we're going to need fossil fuels to power all this stuff.
Yep. I think we should have.
You're laughing because it's true.
No, 100%. I don't disagree with a word you just said. And what is interesting to me is I have flipped my opinion on this. I used to be very pro data center and thought it was a great thing, and I know better now. And so as I learn and as I hear a very consistent thing from people that have been doing this, like if there was a person that would have a positive view on like data centers, it'd be the guy who drew a living from it for many years. So to a degree, it's a function of you're just calling a thing and saying, it's a great thing. We absolutely need it. It will absolutely is what you need if you want to power AI. Don't put it around the humans. At least that's what I'm hearing from you.
Well, I'm of the opinion that I just don't want any around my backyard. You know?
Yeah, neither does anybody else.
Go put one up in Atlanta, drain Lake Lanier even more. You know, but the real problem is, you know, these places generate millions of dollars of revenue for the companies that build them, but that doesn't translate to millions of dollars worth of jobs and tax revenue in those local areas. So it's kind of a hard sell, but you know, they're going to every place they can think of to try and see about where we can put them in. My mother works for a law firm in a rural county in Georgia, and you know, they're coming to us and they're having to look up, because her attorney, being like the only attorney in the county, is the county attorney, right? He's the attorney for the county government. So they have to look up, you know, what is the cost of these things? What's the expense? What's the benefit? What is required to put these things in? And what you're seeing is actually all these rural counties are, I don't want to say co-op because they're not like joining as a business unit, but they're working together to try and figure out these needs, because none of them actually understand any of these needs. And my big worry is that, you know, some of these local counties are going to essentially get tricked into going for some of these things, thinking it's going to be a huge deal for them. Because you know, if you've got a poor county, they're constantly struggling for revenue. They don't have enough money to fund their schools because they live out in the sticks. Property values are low. They don't make a whole lot on taxes. They don't have a lot of industry or anything. And then something like this comes in, and they see, you know, this place is, you know, projected to bring in $10 million of revenue each year. But, you know, in order for them to actually put it in, we're going to have to spend, you know, millions of dollars to develop our electrical grid, to develop our cooling systems, to bring in, you know, tier 1 providers for internet service. We're going to have multiple of those. And we're going to have to give a 10-year massive tax break to this company to convince them to put into our place. But it's going to bring in so many jobs, and they hire 10 people who are from out of that county.
So I can directly relate to that. My county we couldn't raise enough awareness to get enough signatures to get it on a vote. They're moving forward with a data center, and like you were saying, we have an issue. So first of all, I live in a county that has had perpetual drought for the last 3 years. On top of the fact that, you know, they're saying this is going to be such a wonderful income draw for us. But there's all kinds of challenges around the fact that, like, the population is told that it's good for them. What I wanted to bring up is because they entered into this initial discussion about 3 years ago, they put a hold on critical infrastructure in my county. We get brownouts in my county because they're like, oh, well, when the data center comes in, they'll fix it. And so it will, by the time the data center gets up and running, provided that we get transistors, because that's the bottleneck right now, it will have been 7 years since we first started getting our first brownouts. And they're just letting the infrastructure deteriorate because that's one of the deals with this data center is like, we'll give you the water and the land and whatever else. You just have to fix the electrical grid.
Yeah. That's pretty terrible. And if you've been in drought for 3 years, there's no way they're going to put a data center in there. You're not going to have the ability to cool it.
I know, but they think that we're still going forward, and the data center still hasn't actually pulled out. I think the data center is kind of crossing their fingers that we're going to get some heavy rain.
Yeah, but I mean, I can't imagine a data center company would look at a place and say, they've had a drought for 3 years. Just because we get one good year of rain, you know, 3 years is a long time to go for a drought. Yeah. And if that happens every 10 years, you know, well, maybe it's good for the next 10 years, but then we're going to have 3 years where we can't really operate at full capacity.
It's pretty brutal.
You know, I mean, we were in drought for like the first 5 months of this year, and it was rough.
I mean, we'd celebrate 5 months. Like, I'm actually not being serious about that. We'd celebrate 5 months of drought. That'd be okay.
I get it, man. And when you get into a place where you haven't had rainfall for a long time, and we say this, there's probably a bunch of people who live in a city who don't even think about this. But if you're from a rural area where, you know, people are raising livestock and hay and corn and you fish in a river and things, you know, rainfall matters a lot.
Our river is now a creek. I'm not actually kidding. You can walk across our river. If in some spots, I can stretch my legs out long enough to be on either side of what was once a river.
Oh, that's terrible, man. I really feel for you.
Can you explain to me why you couldn't do like a cooled, like closed loop system? Like, why does it have to be a continual drain on water?
Because it gets too warm. It heats the water up so much. You know, you have to. You've got liquid cooling going into the place. The liquid warms up, then you have to either get new liquid in or you have to cool the liquid down. You know, it's not like a closed loop system in a car where you have a radiator and you've got so much air blowing across that radiator that can cool that water antifreeze solution down. When you're talking millions of gallons a day, you don't have enough capacity to closed loop cool that. Because, I mean, it's not like a vehicle where you're getting a passive breeze going through the front of the car as you're going down the road. And then when you don't have that, you have an electric fan that kicks on and helps cool it down. That electric fan has a cost as well, but it's relatively small for something as small like an internal combustion engine. But when you're talking about this much power, this many kilowatt hours going through a place, then it becomes really impossible to build a closed loop cooling system.
Being really noisy to get enough fans on.
Oh gosh, I hadn't even considered the noise possibility.
And then I suppose you're somewhat dependent and beholden on what the temperature is outside because you know to be able to exchange that heat out. So that's a problem too then.
No.
Huh. So it just becomes cheaper, easier, more reliable than to just suck it out, run it through, and then flush it?
Yeah. I mean, basically, it's almost like this is a very primitive description, but if you have an outboard motor on a boat, you know, it sucks in water from the lake or river, runs it through the engine passages to cool them down, and spits it back out the bottom, and then it just sucks in new fresh water. That's basically how they work.
Interesting. Any parting thoughts on, particularly as it relates to maybe younger people that are getting into technology and starting to think about, like, how do I work or how do I compete in a world where AI is a reality, where my colleagues and my peers aren't necessarily going to understand things down to the bottom level, where my boss is maybe telling me, good enough is good enough. What would D. Alan Hicks say?
This is not an easy question to answer. And it's not an easy question to answer, not necessarily because of AI, but because our landscape is constantly shifting. This has never been an easy question to answer since I've been in tech, because no one comes to tech in the same way. We all come in different ways. I mean, most of us, we like video games or we just like to know how things work or something. And so, you know, for me to say, study your fundamentals of SQL or TCP/IP or whatever, you know, that's not going to appeal to someone who comes at it from a standpoint of, I want to create programs. I want to create this beautiful program to do something. You know, someone who wants to get in from a coding aspect, that sort of stuff might be helpful, but it's not going to be the sort of things they want to learn, you know. But I think the more foundational knowledge you get as opposed to knowledge about specific tools, the better you are. The more you know about standards, and what's the old joke, you know, the great thing about standards is there's so many to choose from. But there are some pretty fundamental standards. Structured query language is a pretty fundamental standard. every database has its extensions to that, but they'll all operate off the basic structured query language, and then, learning a few little extensions is not that big a deal. Everything knows IPv4, IPv6, TCP, UDP. If you know those things, you can operate at a decent level on any sort of network stuff. And then, you might have to learn like BGP. That's also a standard. Everything runs BGP. And so, you don't necessarily have to learn Cisco or Juniper or Linux or Palo Alto or whatever. If you know that foundational standard that they all use, then you can step into that role and learn the specifics of that particular tool. That's generally the advice I give to people. And I think it works good for folks, because I think the folks who want to know how to do the thing, by that I mean, let's use an example of the typical freshman college year course of how to use Excel and Word. They teach you how to use Excel and Word. They don't teach you how to type. They don't teach you how to use a word processor. The people who know how to use a word processor or a spreadsheet are able to use Microsoft Word or Excel or Word Perfect or OpenOffice or whatever.
Yep.
So I think once you learn that basic skill, that foundational knowledge, you can apply it in whatever tool set you need to apply it in. Getting that foundational knowledge is not the easiest thing, and you have to start with a tool usually. Like, if you want to learn to type, you're probably starting with Microsoft Word or OpenOffice or something, and you're going to learn that tool along the way. But if you learn that foundational aspect of this is how you type, this is how you save, this is how you print, this is how you format, this is how you, justify margins, blah, blah, blah. The icons and stuff might look different, but, you're going to be able to take that and apply it to whatever. If you learn structured query language, you're going to be able to do that in MySQL, MariaDB, Postgres, SQL Server. You're going to be able to do it in anything that speaks structured query language. If you know TCP IP, you're going to be able to apply that in any network context. And maybe you learn that on Windows, or maybe you learn it on BSD or Linux or something else. But, you learn it there and you can apply it everywhere, whether it's on your iPhone or your Android device or what.
You said to me one time, one of the things that drew you to networking in the first place was the fact that it doesn't change with platform.
Pretty much, yeah. I really like that. Also, I like just knowing the way that the stuff worked, the way it communicated, and I found early on that a lot of people I talked to who knew a lot of stuff didn't know that. People who would be able to write Perl, and I will bow down to anyone who can write and read Perl to this day. That is a god of computing, in my opinion, because that is the most satanic, unreadable mess you've ever seen in your life.
You preach it, brother.
There's a reason no one uses Perl anymore.
It's the right once read never language.
Exactly. What was it? A friend of mine said on the alt.os.linux.slackware mailing list one time, Perl is significantly more readable after encryption. But going back to your question, that was one of the things that I enjoyed about it, is that it wasn't just I was learning this thing on Linux. It was applicable on Windows. It was applicable on Mac. It was applicable on Unix. We didn't have phones at that time, but it became applicable to phones as soon as it came out. It worked on Cisco. Worked on whatever you happen to have, and understanding how that worked allow you to troubleshoot and fix that on anything.
The endpoint just becomes an implementation detail.
Precisely.
I love it. Actually, I like that as a nice place to leave us. The Alan Hicks, I appreciate the time so much. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. We'll catch up with you again soon.
Glad to be here.
Hey, the music in our ears means we're out of time. I thank you for joining us. We record this show every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central. Join us at asknoahshow.com. You can find all the show notes at podcast.asknoahshow.com. We're back next week, 6 p.m. Central on Tuesdays, again at asknoahshow.com.